And a good Tuesday afternoon to you. Welcome on in. It is lunch with Claibs and Joe here on claibsonline.com. Facebook and Twitter is where you can find us, as I am Joe Roderick, and I believe it looks like we have a frozen Mike Claiborne on the other side as we wait for him to get connected. We are driven by Mungenast St. Louis Acura, Mungenast Alton Toyota, sponsored by Ryan Kelly, the home loan expert. Find him online at thehomeloanexpert.com. Also, we are powered by Ameren, Illinois. The folks at Ameren, Illinois want you to know that they have the have the Smart Energy Kits. You can sign up. You can become a member with the Ameren, Illinois Smart Savers Club. It is Ameren, Illinois SmartSavers.com. They are still giving away the free smart thermostats. I have one here at my house. And you can they just send it to you. You go and you sign up and they send it to you absolutely free. They have other programs as well. In fact, just a week or so ago, got the energy efficient package, the smart home kit in the house that included some light bulbs that change colors when you connect them to whether it be your Google or your Alexa, and new energy saving power strips and all kinds of things available there at Ameren, Illinois. Go to their website. That is the Ameren, Illinois Smart Savers, and get the free thermostat giveaway. We'll put all the information up on the website at claibsonline.com, as I think we have Mike Claiborne back, as he was frozen and he's back now. Claibs, what's going on?
Joe, how are you?
I am doing well. This is your last show that you will be doing until probably April from your place there in St. Louis, and we're hopefully there's no dog barking this week, and maybe we got the internet connection figured out now too.
Well, you know what? We had this thing all set up, and I made one move at the last second and almost lost the whole show. So I'm kind of working from a disadvantage.
As he knocks himself off there. So as he's sitting there and you watch him playing with it, he somehow knocks himself off. So we wait to get him back on, as there's plenty of stuff that we need to go over with Claibs. And Claibs, I need you for this. So I need you to stay on. I can't run this show by myself because
I'm not going to mess with anything else. I'm going to do one thing
as
here.
You're reaching for something right now. The famous last words.
All right. I'm done. I'm not messing with anything else.
Because I could sit here and I could talk about what everybody already knows, and that's the announcement or the breaking news from this weekend about Mike Shannon announcing that he's going to retire after this season, his 50th in the broadcast booth. I could sit here and talk about that, but you're the man that works with him every day, so you're the one that we need to hear from about this.
Well, there hasn't been any official announcement, first of all, and I think that what we read in the Post was not necessarily accurate. I think what happened was that the headline made it seem like this was all said and done. Nothing's been said and done. But I do think that we're probably close to an announcement at some point, as this might be Mike's last year. And again, might be. I hope that he's going to be happy more than anything else, because he's been just an incredible teammate, great friend, father, uncle, brother, you name it, to me and everybody he works with. But I thought the way it was set up probably didn't give it justice, because that's not the way Mike Shannon probably would have announced this whole situation. So I would just suggest to everybody, just stay tuned. We'll get some sort of official word at some point when everybody feels like they've got something to say.
And the Cardinals, when that does happen, are going to do it big. And whether, game one, whenever he's introduced game one, and there's, 5,000, 10,000 fans in the stadium for that, all the way to the end of September, where hopefully there's 45,000 in the stadium, able to give him a proper farewell. The Cardinals have probably thought this through and probably have something in the works for him for that final game, whenever it might be at the end of this season. So
yeah, you're right.
Yeah, and as Jay points out, Shannon can do whatever the hell he wants to do. As I don't think anyone's going to disagree with that. By the way, speaking of Jay, I'm going to have him on my show this weekend because I have Fran Charles on Weekend Joe coming up this Friday. Fran was part of the winter warm-up. He was part of one of the shows at the winter warm-up, and he and Jay grew up next door to each other. They rode bikes together. So I'm going to have Jay join me for my chat with Fran Charles this week.
Well, Shan's been listen to me, Shan. Fran's been a great friend for a long time, and we stay in touch. We had a great time at the last official winter meeting, and to watch him grow and continue to grow, it just makes me feel good. And I think there's a lot more in front of Fran Charles. I mean, you look at the NFL. I mean, how much longer is James Brown going to do it? How much longer is Kurt Menefee going to do it? Major League Baseball has had some great opportunities for him. I think that Fran Charles has got a whole lot of great things in front of him before it's all said and done.
So that'll be coming up on Friday with Fran. By the way, speaking of winter warm-up, you were a part of the Cardinal broadcaster Zoom that they had. You were also a part of the infielders Zoom that they had. Any big news come out of winter warm-up this weekend?
No, I think everybody's, because we just don't have enough information with regard to how things are going to unfold for spring training, that, was pretty much close to the vest because there's nothing else to talk about. I get the feeling, though, within the next week, we'll probably get more definitive information with respect to how this thing is going to unfold. Because there's a lot of ground to cover. Think about this. We don't even know about the DH. How is spring training going to be covered media-wise? What kind of access is there going to be? Are they going to let fans in? What's the media setup going to be? Remember, we're going to minor league ballparks, and they don't have the vast space that we're accustomed to in major league ballparks. So there's a lot of things that still have to be addressed. And more importantly, the players and the owners still need to converse about trying to get a collective bargaining agreement done also. So there's a lot of work to be done. There's very little information coming out, and that's unfortunate because a lot of people's livelihood is at stake, and it appears that maybe one side, if not both, haven't taken that into account yet.
Yeah, as far as the news and notes, I saw, there are a few of the forums that they held. There were friendly little jabs taken amongst the teammates. I honestly, it's the biggest news I think that came of the whole weekend was Derek Gould's reporting that Matt Carpenter might use batting gloves this year. That might have been the biggest news that came out of winter warm-up, just to kind of show how little news came out of winter warm-up.
Well, I guess either that or we're going to put a C on the jersey to see who the captain is. I mean, we're getting into silly season already, and I know we would all like to report and discuss more pertinent things, but there just isn't enough information coming out, and that's got to stop at some point, or let's say it's got to start because this is too much at stake right now.
And if you're going, if you're putting a C on a jersey, when was the last time any team did that?
I'm kidding. It's been done before. I think the Mets did it at one point.
I was going to say the Mets and maybe the Yankees, if they...
No, they wouldn't put a C. No, they would never mess that uniform up putting a C on it. But somebody else...
Yeah, they would name one, but I don't think they... I was going to say, if you're going to do that the year after Yachty and Wainwright leave, that would be... I
was joking.
Okay, hey, you were watching some of those. I don't know. Speaking of Yachty, by the way, our friend Polo had Yachty on his show on Levita Baseball, and we talked about it this weekend. I don't know how much stock you put in the comments that Yachty made, but talking to Polo afterwards, he said that he heard a guy that was ready to just walk away from the game of baseball and would be just fine with retiring after this season if the right offer doesn't come along.
Well, it's his prerogative. You have to remember something. Obviously, I'd like to see Yachty happy. Okay, he's been a great soldier, great player for this organization. But if you don't feel it, then you shouldn't play, because you're cheating yourself and you're cheating your legacy. And if he doesn't get the deal he likes, then that's his option. The thing that we have to take into account, players have done this before, and in Major League Baseball has never canceled a game because of it. So it's his decision because he needs to be happy in his own situation. And we'll just have to keep our fingers crossed that it's something that can be worked out. But I don't think that moves a needle with regard to negotiations. Teams have to be treated like a business, and they will. And it's a situation that I think at some point will come to a point where it is or it isn't. And I don't think there'll be hard feelings on either side. Obviously, you wish you could do a deal. And I think they can. I really do. I think Yadi's a valuable player to this team. And it's not like the Cardinals have this dearth of talent as far as catching behind him. And I'm not taking anything away from Andrew Kisner. He just hasn't played enough. And there's nobody behind Kisner who's close to being ready. So it would behoove the Cardinals and Yadi to have one more go at it. They're both working from a position of strength, and we'll see where it goes.
I found the article. I don't know if you saw the piece that Ben Fredrickson wrote for the Post-Dispatch. When you look at all of the different players that have left the NL Central this year or haven't been signed by anybody within the NL Central this year, if you put that team together, where would they finish against all the other NL Central teams? I thought it was a fun piece that he did, and it just kind of shows the mass exodus of talented players that have left this division this year. And the Cardinals, if you look at it, they've lost Adam Wainwright, they've lost Yadier Molina, they've lost Colton Wong, they've lost Brad Miller. But when you look at that compared to some of what the other teams have lost in the division, I don't know how that really stacks up. And now you're looking at maybe Cincinnati trading away even more.
Yeah, the division is kind of surrendered when you look at it. And you mentioned losing those guys. I mean, I don't think any of those guys are officially lost yet. They just don't have contracts. And if you look around, there's a lot of players that don't have contracts going into the third week of January. So I'm not sure if that's a really major concern because everybody's still able to talk. Everybody's still able to make some decisions. So I don't think that that's a bigger issue compared to the other teams in the division that have moved guys on, whether they've traded them, they've gone on to sign for free agency. That's a different situation completely. And those teams have basically indicated that they don't plan on really competing for the division championship in 2021. And they may have their reasons. Maybe it's payroll management they'd like to have. Maybe they are trying to wait and develop some players this year. Maybe they're waiting on next year or this year's free agent class, which will be plentiful. So there's a lot of reasons why they're doing it. And maybe some of these teams just don't have the cash that they need to maintain a competitive team. So all those things said, everybody may have their own reason, but when it's all said and done, it does appear that this division is capitulated.
You saw two pitchers, former National League Central pitchers on the move yesterday. John Lester signs with the Nationals, and then the Pirates trade Joe Musgrove to the Padres in what ended up being a 3-team deal. But that's just another good arm that's left the NL Central that the Cardinals don't have to face 2, maybe 3 times during a 162-game schedule, as the Padres just seem to get stronger. They were already good. They continued to get better by adding good players, and it looks like they're also trying to re-sign Jerks and Profar to add to their depth as well.
They ain't fooling around. There's no question about that. And you know what I think they learned from this past season, as we've all learned, you never have enough pitching. So what they're doing, they're getting some veteran arms to buy time for their younger players to develop. Remember, Joe, none of these young pitchers really had a formal minor league season. And so instead of trying to just throw them in the fire, maybe they give them some time to develop. And who knows, if an arm goes down, this kid might be closer to being ready then than he is now. So I really applaud what San Diego's tried to do with regard to making sure that they have not only a competitive roster, but a well-stacked roster in the event if they run into injury or some player doesn't live up to the performance.
Not only that, this is a team that in the third game of the postseason this year against the Cardinals had to go with a bullpen start because their arms were so injured, and they are making sure that will not happen again. As you know, you can put out a rotation of 5 right now. They might be 8 deep at the starter rotation, and that's not an issue they're going to have come postseason play this year.
Well, and you know what? I think you better be 8 deep. I think that's one of the reasons why people like the Cardinals to win the division, The offense is still trying to catch up, but you better go into spring training with at least 8 or 9 guys that could be in the rotation, because at some point you're going to need them, whether they're going to come out of the bullpen, whether they go back to the minors. But, seldom do you see a starting 5 rotation go through a whole season without missing a start or 2. So I think in this day and age, and throw this into the equation, Joe, these guys just don't go as far in the games. I mean, a guy goes 200 innings, all of a sudden you think he's a Superman, when you've had other guys that have gone 300 innings. So to put yourself in a position to have depth is probably paramount at this point if you want to have a competitive team that can get you deep into a season.
And not to mention, you talked about not knowing what the year is going to look like, not knowing what spring training, not knowing what the DH is going to look like. We could be looking at more 7-inning doubleheaders this year, where you need to have 6 or 7 starters, because once a week you might have a doubleheader that you have to play where that 5-man rotation isn't going to last you like they did.
If I'm a pitching coach and a manager, with the exception of maybe 2 guys that are going to be your designated closer, and I may even stretch that here as well, everybody should come to spring training expected to be stretched out, because the era of the 1-inning situation, I think, is waning, where we may go back to the good old days where you had a fireman who come in the 7th inning and he'd get that guy out, and then he pitched the 8th and maybe the 9th, or maybe he comes in the 8th and gets that out, get the out there, and maybe he has a 5-inning save or maybe a 2-inning save. I think we're going to go back to that because of the way the bullpens are set up. Guys are throwing a lot more, and you're going to need a lot more of them. And I kind of like it, because some guys are better on the second day. So we'll see how it unfolds. But I think the mindset of pitching and its approach, I think, is going through a gradual transition.
One team that's, they might have to pause their hot stove moves for the time being are the New York Mets. Newly hired GM Jared Porter was fired this morning after a story came out in ESPN last night that back in 2016, he said sent explicit photos to a female journalist who was covering Major League Baseball at the time. That woman is no longer in the business, no longer covering baseball, no longer in journalism, and has moved back to her home country. Even the news came out last night. You saw the Mets move very fast to get rid of Jared Porter from the organization. Comments have also been made by the Diamondbacks and the Cubs denouncing what he did as he worked his way up through both of their organizations to get the job as the GM with the New York Mets.
Well, I would say it's unfortunate, but I think it's worse than that. I mean, this is a guy who just didn't use good judgment, and it cost him his career. I commend the Mets and their owner for addressing this right. There was no thinking about it twice. The guy was wrong. And if baseball wants to set a better example, then things like this have to happen. This guy just used bad judgment. And unfortunately, as you ascend in this industry, those sort of things can come back to haunt you. Now, I guess the other issue is it wasn't the fact that he sent it, but he sent it 60 times and she never really responded. Now, if this was consensual, okay, I get it, but it wasn't. And he just didn't know how to take no for an answer. And that's something that I think, and every team, let me make sure everybody understands this. Every team, Major League Baseball has a very strict policy on this, where you have to do an online seminar and you have to go through it on an annual basis. Every team is responsible for you taking. If you don't do it, then you don't work. So this isn't like Major League Baseball hasn't warned people about things of this nature. All right. So they try to do their part. This person thought he was better than the system, and the system, obviously, that be it the media, caught up to him, and now he's out of work, and I don't know how he gets back in the game.
Yeah, if as a Mets fan, having to, and this has nothing to do with whatever he did. Last year, you hire a new manager, and he's fired before the season gets started. And now this year, you hire a new GM, and he gets fired before the season started. Mets fans just can't catch a break right now. Well, at least they got Lindor out of it.
And they got an owner who's got more money than anybody in baseball, so I don't think he's going anywhere. So I think they're safe on that. I don't think it goes any higher as far as people in administrative positions getting themselves in trouble. Yeah, they did get Lindor, and they're going to be a good team no matter who the general manager is, okay? That division is stacked right now. When you have the Mets, you have Atlanta, you have Philadelphia, who's going to have a say-so. And let's not forget about the Miami Marlins. I mean, they made the postseason last year. So that's going to be a pretty deep division that you better roll up your sleeves and be ready to go. And I don't think you can afford to take a game off this year.
Hey, this is Lunch with Claibs and Joe here on claibsonline.com. We are sponsored by Ryan Kelly, the home loan expert. Find him online at thehomeloanexpert.com. Also, Ryan Kelly right now is promoting his Eat Local program. He's encouraging everyone to eat local. And you can right now go to the website eatlocalmeals.com and nominate your favorite local restaurants. And in turn, your favorite local restaurant will potentially be picked as one of the restaurants from the list to buy meals for essential workers in your area. Again, that is online at eatlocalmeals.com. Another fine program set out by Ryan Kelly, the home loan expert. Again, find him online at thehomeloanexpert.com.
Concept. My thing, I couldn't pick one favorite. I'd have to be a regional guy. So, if I'm in Illinois, Fast Eddie's on the list. If I'm in West County, maybe it's Ruth's Chris. If I'm in Clayton, it's Capitol Grill or Cafe Napoli. There's so many good restaurants in the area that we can go to. So I'm going to make that a regional favorite more than anything else.
I've been going down the street to a place called Silver Creek Saloon here in Belleville for wings each weekend of the playoffs so far, and I think right now they'd be my nomination. I think once I finish the show today, I'm going to be going down the street too to a Mexican restaurant for some Taco Tuesday. El Gordito, it's mine.
Speaking of playoffs, I don't know if you have it on our list here. How do we do this weekend?
I have it right now, actually. So you went 2-2 on the games this weekend. Frank and Andy Hanselman both went 4-0. Brian Hoffman and myself, we each went 3-1. Hoff picked the Ravens to beat the Bills. I picked the Browns to beat the Chiefs. Your two wrong picks were the Ravens and the Saints in that. So right now in the playoffs, I am tied at 7-3 with Andy Hanselman and Frank Cusimano. You and Hoff are at 6-4. Overall, Andy is climbing up the ranks. Hoff has 50-33 overall in the season, while Andy is 49-34. So with 3 games left to pick on the season, Andy has a chance to overtake Brian Hoffman in the final standings. I have a chance to finish at 500 on the year as I'm 40-43. So if I go 3 for 3 to end the season, I'll finish right at 500 and somewhat respectable as
I'm planning on going 3 for 3 also. So I don't know if that puts me in the hunt, but that's going to be the mission here.
3 for 3 right now. You're 48-35. So you're 2 games back of Brian Hoffman. Frank's 47-37 in the standings. So the 4 of you are all right there. But let's get into that. We'll touch on the Blues a little bit later on. Let's talk about what we saw this past weekend. I feel like I should have gone 4-0, as I was the only one that picked the Browns to beat the Chiefs. And if it wasn't for that ridiculous rule of the fumble through the end zone being a turnover, I feel like I would have won that pick.
Well, so now we got the crying towel out. Okay.
Yep.
All right. Yeah. So what don't you like about that rule?
The defense never possesses the ball, therefore, why should they get the ball?
They didn't get it went out of the end zone. I mean, here's the thing. It was a touchback.
Why is it a touchback though? If it's a touchback, the team that had the ball gets the ball. So why don't you penalize the Browns and put them back at the 20 and make it a 20-yard penalty for fumbling through the end zone?
No.
Why should they lose possession just because of where on the field they fumbled the football?
Well, because it's in the end zone. I mean, any other place on the field, it goes out of bounds. and you
And they kick
start
the
from
ball.
there.
Yeah.
But the thing is, it's in a red zone. It's in a scoring zone, and this penalty stands out, or this play stands out only because it was an odd play, first of all. But you know what? You see it maybe 3 times a year. If you look at the season, you may see a touchback of that nature maybe 3 times a year. I think because of the situation, because it was a playoffs, it's magnified even more. Not a common play, but it is a play that's been on the books for forever, and I don't think it's going to change.
And not only did they, not only can you complain about that rule, there was also a missed helmet-to-helmet hit that caused the fumble in the first place. So I think that might be revisited as well this offseason as to that, if that can be reviewed.
Doubt it. But and here's something that and this is, I like Stefanski mentioning the fact, a lot of teams tell players, don't stick your hand out, don't stick the ball toward the goal line inside of the one. And, that was really not a good play. And we see it done more and more, and we're seeing guys fumble at the goal line. Had he held on to it, he would have been knocked out of bounds at the one, or less than the one, maybe the 1 foot line, and they would have had a chance to score at that point. So the player owns a little bit of responsibility here as well.
But that's just a player taking a risk. If you could, you can go to all Chad Henne rushing for 14 yards at the end of the game. When is Andy Reid going to call that play in the playbook? When is Andy Reid ever going to tell Chad Henne that it's okay for him to take off and try to run for a 14-yard first down? He's never going to do it. But the fact that he came close to it, it's okay. It's in all sports.
It's only okay because it worked.
Exactly. It's like in basketball when when your power forward shoots a 3 and you're going, what do you do? Oh, it went in. Okay, that's fine. It's only okay if it works out. So Stefanski never would have brought up that rule that the team has had Higgins, scored on that play or held on to the football.
Well, he may not have brought it up publicly. That's not to say that they wouldn't go back and remind guys, hey, boys, we dodged a bullet this time. Let's stay to our principles about how we approach that particular part of the field. So, again, because it didn't work is why people are grousing. And why it did work for Henne is why everybody thinks it's a brilliant call. That's just the nature of sports and the difference between success and failure.
So you don't think, though, that there's a possibility of reviewing helmet-to-helmet hits?
Well, I don't think so. There may be an issue. You see, again, there's a lot of things that they probably should review that they don't. And I think you have to take into account that if we start calling flags on every play or every review of that nature, we'll be here all day. And that's the one thing football is trying to get away from. And that's the one problem that baseball has. This is still a TV sport. And if anybody doesn't think so, then think again. And they don't want the 4-hour game. They don't want the college football game. They're trying to keep this thing at a pretty good pace. And while a helmet-to-helmet hit may happen maybe twice a game, or any penalty of that nature that we feel should be on the book, because if it's helmet-to-helmet this year, what will it be next year? And then it starts to grow and grow and grow to the point where somebody's going to say we should be able to review all plays, which if you want to do that, I'm good with. And it's almost like in baseball where you got a 10-second window, a 15-second window while the play clock continues to make a decision on it. After that, we're done. We're moving on. Or maybe they just say we'll do it because we have the red flag, we can throw it. So maybe there's categories on how you want to use your red flag compared to somebody up top who says, hey, fellas, you might want to take a look at this one. And I think we see that in college football where, guys can bust down from upstairs and say, hey, you might want to take a look at this one. Or that's how you do it in the final 2 minutes. Yeah. So there's ways you can probably do it, but I think you have to be careful for what you wish for here.
Yeah, but it's, as you look at it as an official, you're looking at that play and you're looking at the review to see if the fumble went out of bounds or if it was that, and you see that helmet-to-helmet hit happen when it does. I can't imagine just how hard it is to see that and realize in that moment that you're about to go out there and confirm a call that has the potential to completely change the complexity of the game. knowing that you just witnessed an even bigger missed call in that moment?
Well, let me stop you for a minute. I see what you're saying, but you show me an official who's worried about the outcome of a game, I'll show you an official who shouldn't be working. Call what's in the rule book. You can't worry about the score. You can't worry about the date on the calendar. You have to call what you see. Now, to take it one step further, if you've got that side judge and all his responsibility is he in or out, to try and process that along with maybe the helmet to helmet hit, which seems obvious, but you know what, when you're locked in, you're just looking for one thing. That's where you might have to get help from other officials. Now, the only way you get help from other officials if they're in position. So maybe what the officiating crews may have to do, and this would come from the league, is how they realign themselves on sideline plays to make sure that they've got everything covered from whether he's in or out to whether it was another infraction. I can't say how they were set up because we never see the high angle of the position of every official, who, by the way, has his own job to deal with. Okay, he's got to watch holding. He's got to watch pass interference. He's got to watch unnecessary roughness. There's so many things. He's got to watch offside. So they've all got a designated responsibility. And sometimes trying to add on to that, sometimes you may not get the ideal view of what you're looking for.
We saw Lamar Jackson go out with get knocked out with a concussion. Patrick Mahomes also got knocked out with a concussion. This week on my show, I'm going to have Chris Nowinski on my program. He is a former WWE wrestler, Harvard-educated gentleman who now has started the Concussion Legacy Foundation, which now works with the NFL to better understand concussions and how to go about recognizing them, treating them, keeping players safe. I'm going to have him on this weekend to talk about what we saw, because it's one thing for, an offensive lineman to get knocked out with it, but you're talking about two of the most recognizable quarterbacks in the entire NFL in one of the biggest weekends for the NFL of the season, both getting knocked out with a concussion. And here we sit at 12:30 on Tuesday, Claibs, and we don't know what Patrick Mahomes' status is for the game on Sunday yet.
Well, it's an off day in the NFL, so you wouldn't know anything until tomorrow regardless. I'm going to disagree with you on if it's an offensive. I think offensive linemen have families. I think offensive linemen have responsibility.
It's not getting the notoriety, though, that Patrick Mahomes and Lamar Jackson.
Okay, you may be right about that, but that's only because people don't look down the road. Hey, I got news for you. If the Kansas City Chiefs left tackle is gone out with a concussion, and you throw in some guy in who doesn't know the system as well, who hasn't played a lot, I guarantee you it'll make a big deal of difference to Patrick Mahomes or anybody else. The NFL is.
You know what I'm saying, though. I mean,
I know what you're saying, but here's the thing that I think we missed the boat on. We're getting caught up into the personality of the position compared to the importance of the team. And there's a huge difference. And I'm not saying you couldn't win without a good left tackle. You probably would compete, but when you don't have one protecting your quarterback, it makes a big deal, makes a big difference. I don't think anything's changed because, as I said, today is a Tuesday. It's a traditional off day. Nobody gives out information. The first injury report is always read on Wednesday anyway. All right, so nothing's going to change from that. Not because of the importance of the game. That's just the system of the NFL.
We'll get into that this weekend, and then we'll about the picks. We'll have those up coming up on Weekend Joe for who we like in the game. But one thing I do want to get to before we move off of football, you saw a handful of head coaching jobs filled this past week in the NFL. Urban Meyer goes down to Jacksonville. The Rams defensive coordinator goes to the Chargers. The guy Salia from the 49ers goes to the Jets. The Texans still have not hired anyone yet. Dan Campbell, was it to the Lions, the former tight end. One name, though, that is missing from all of these head coaching jobs is Kansas City Chiefs offensive coordinator Eric Bieniemy, who for the second season in a row looks like he's going to be snubbed.
Well, I don't know what can be said about that hasn't already been said. I think the NFL is full of shit about this whole process for so many different reasons. And what really pisses me off is the people who cover this game, whether it's the Schefters or the Mortensons and the other people who now have bought into the salacious rumors that he doesn't interview well. I got news for you. There's a lot of guys in this league that are getting second and third chances that have done whatever allegedly Eric Bieniemy has done. And by the way, nobody can tell us what he fails in interviewing. They don't tell us that. They just, well, that's what they're saying. But the bottom line is he's producing. And for those people who say, well, that's Andy Reid's team, he's making the calls. Do you really know that? No, you don't. Andy Reid and Eric Bieniemy converse, and they talk about it. Eric Bieniemy's job is to come up with the game plan that he and Andy Reid can implement. Andy Reid does not call every play. He's got a headset on. He makes a suggestion. Here's something to look at. He gives options. But Eric Bieniemy is the one that dials it up. And if Andy Reid doesn't like it, then it's his job to override it. So there's so many reasons on why this thing, the deck is stacked against him. And I got a bigger problem with, it's not just Eric Bieniemy. Saleh is an African-American who's getting a job, but there's a lot of other guys that are qualified that don't happen to be under 40 who've been on a job for 1 year that all of a sudden find a way to get themselves a head coaching job. You know, I think the whole thing is just bullshit from day one, and the NFL should be ashamed of themselves. And quite frankly, I don't know why an African-American coach would even bother to sit and interview, because we all know it's bullshit. Okay, that's all it is. They need somebody to put down on the list to say, oh yeah, we talked to him, knowing he's got no chance. He has no, just like they had Marvin Lewis. Somebody talked about, hey, we're going to interview Marvin Lewis. Well, let me get this straight. You're going to interview a guy who never won a playoff game. He was in Cincinnati forever. Nice guy, really good defensive coach, but you're going to give him another chance? Who are you kidding? And that's the problem I have with the NFL and how they allow this circus to go on. But if you're a black coach, you almost want to tell them to go take a hike, because you realize, or you've already been told, you're not going to get a fair shake here.
One of the names that I saw popping up, as far you talk about second chances for white head coaches, Scott Linehan's name has been popping up. He's going to be the offensive coordinator.
He's going to be the offensive coordinator. Is it in Jacksonville?
Is that because I saw his name attached to the Eagles job? I thought.
Oh, heaven help us. Well, that's why the Eagles are what. That's why the Eagles are the Eagles. And I mean, it just it's mind-boggling to see how this thing unfolds. And you know what? Everybody just shrugs their shoulders. It's an annual conversation, and then after everybody's hired, it goes away until next year. And you know what? There's no checks and balance to do anything to at least create a more level playing field. Because they're pulling guys out of their ass now that we've never even heard of, okay, that are getting jobs. And I'm not saying they can't do the job, but I can tell you this. There's some people who don't look like them that probably are as qualified that aren't even getting a whiff.
Who's going to get that Tennessee Volunteers head coaching job?
Well, that depends on how much probation the NCAA decides to put them on. They say that thing there has gotten out of hand. It was out of hand so bad that it was so glaring that somebody had to call a timeout. Here's a bigger question. You know, Tennessee always has a top 15, top 20 recruiting class. There's a lot of good players that don't know where they're going to go next because they don't have an athletic director. They don't have a coach. And they're going to be behind in recruiting if they bring in a new coach or when they bring in a new coach. So if you're a player and you're looking around and you're saying, I don't know what this is going to look like, because you can transfer out, there's going to be some schools licking their chops that are going to start calling those players up again, seeing if they'd be interested in coming and playing in a better environment that they're currently in. Where they go, and remember this, Joe. Remember what a train wreck it was the last time out when they had to sign, when they found Jeremy Pruitt. Remember Mike Leach turned it down, or they messed that up because the president got involved, and there were like 4 or 5 other coaches.
Well, they hired Greg Schiano.
Exactly.
And then Clay Travis started this huge protest against it, and they ended up backtracking on Greg Schiano and finding Jeremy Pruitt after everybody else turned them down.
Well, the Mike Leach deal was done until the president heard about it. I mean, listen, I got so many stories about this Tennessee hire, make your hair stand on it. So how they get it done. And I think that's one of the reasons why Fulmer retired, because Fulmer was kind of a package deal. Fulmer said, I can help you find a new coach if you make me the athletic director. Well, Fulmer was kind of a favorite son of UT. He was there when Johnny Majors was there when they had their heydays back in the 80s and 90s. And so he felt like he could be the leader of the new Tennessee football program. Well, he was just as much culpable as anybody else.
Blues win last night 5-4 as they are 2-1 now on the season. The first game at Enterprise in 10 plus months since they were last there. A few fans in attendance, family members were essential workers were there in attendance to watch the game. A very, very exciting second period. You saw Mike Hoffman score his first goal as a St. Louis Blue. Justin Falk had a good game as well. Jordan Kyrou, the two wins that they've had, he's impressed so far. The one loss they had, though, it's one of those where just everything went wrong for the team on that night. What are your thoughts on week one of the Blues?
Well, I've already forgotten about that loss. Every now and then you're going to have one of those. And I think with the way the setup is, it was probably more like to happen. But it was a good wake-up call. And even though they won 5-4 last night or whatever the score was, that's not St. Louis Blues hockey, and they still have some work to do. And I think their urgency is prevalent because this is a 56-game season. You can't have many bad nights. There were some things, obviously, I like. Kyrou's obviously gotten off to a good start. It's good to see Hoffman score. I think the key factor was Justin Falk showed up on the offensive side. And if you remember, Joe, when the Blues traded for him, the big heat was, he was an all-star. He can play up, and he's a pretty good offensive defenseman as well. But we didn't see a lot of that last year. And hopefully this will give him a starting point on where he can play with more confidence and look to jump into play a little bit more. But he's a guy that's been kind of like a whipping boy in the brief time he's been here. So hopefully this will get things moving in the right direction for him.
They'll play the Sharks again on Wednesday as part of the way the scheduling goes. You're just playing the teams 2 times at home. Then you go there, you play them 2 times on the road. It's kind of like a baseball series now where you have a homestand with the same team there. Do you like that so far, or do we still need to see more of it before we can judge on that? Because you saw 2 totally different games in Colorado.
You know what? I kind of like it because it breeds familiarity, where you're going to have some guys not liking each other here the second time they play each other or the next time they come around. You don't think that the Colorado Rockies won't have Avalanche won't have a target on their back if they're facing the Blues the way they got embarrassed? So from that standpoint, you're going to have some guys that are not going to like each other. Now, the difference is this isn't a physical league like it used to be, so there's very few guys that can do anything about it. Fortunately, the Blues have a little muscle in Kyle Clifford, but there's some other teams that don't have anybody that can do anything about it. And San Jose was a good example last night. So at some point, general managers are going to have to go out and find somebody to protect some of their players, because if I know you don't have anybody that can do anything about what I want to do, then I'm going to run all over you as much and as often as I need to.
Yeah, again, Wednesday, their next game. I saw you and Cam going back and forth a little bit on Twitter over the coaching staffs. I'll have Cam on this weekend as well. I'll be talking with him coming up about the Blues start to the season. Well,
Bob Bugner was a pretty tough customer in the NHL. The boogeyman is what they call him, and he could go. And Rocky Thompson, who probably was more feared in the minors than he was in the NHL, he had some cups of coffee in the NHL, but he was a roustabout also. And I started looking at him, and I'm like, well, you got Berube, who reportedly has had more fights in professional hockey than anybody. And Steve Ott didn't turn down an invitation very often in his career. You wonder if you turn those 4 loose on each other, what would happen, and one thing leads to another. And then Cam and I started having fun with it. And I'm looking forward to hearing you and Cam, because I think he's a real breath of fresh air, and I certainly enjoy his work. And we laugh a lot about things and during the course of the week, we catch up with each other. But, yeah, that thing kind of got rolling this morning. We had some fun with it.
Before we get out of here, Claibs, quickly, any word on SLU? Because I need more of you and Rammer. I need more of that. I need more reasons to post this picture online as well. And you two can't talk if the Billikens aren't playing. We can't get a podcast out of it.
Apparently, they had another setback where the UMass game has now been postponed.
I saw the earliest they might get on the court is Friday to practice.
That's on practice. And, here's the thing about this, Joe. They have been stagnant for so long. This is going to come down to a conditioning issue more than anything else. I mean, you can Zoom call and have walkthroughs and things of that nature, but you better get up and down the floor and get some wind going. And that's something they haven't been able to do. So I am very concerned about how much actual conditioning time they're going to have in order to be ready for an actual game, which does this. It also makes you expand your bench more. And that's something Travis had done at the beginning of the year where a lot of kids were playing. He started to narrow it down a little bit. He may have to go back to that when they do start playing.
Yeah, and somehow they still stay in the top 25. I don't know who's voting for it, but when you're a team that hasn't played in a month.
There must be some terrible teams in the country for a team that hasn't played in 3 weeks still be nationally ranked.
There, you don't have right now. Is it Kentucky, Duke, and North Carolina are not ranked in the top 25 the first time since the 70s. I think it was 1974 was the last time that all three of those teams were not ranked inside the top 25. Just to kind of show you how much college basketball has flipped this year, or how little effort maybe those schools are putting in.
Well, I think they would all like for it to be over, but I think it also says a lot about one and done. When you talk about those programs and how many kids they've had come through in 1 year and play and then move on. So I think the experience and development element has now caught up to them where they don't have the experience. These kids aren't as developed as they need to be. Hence the fact that the other teams are now caught up to them. Now, how long does that last? I don't know. But I think because of COVID, maybe some kids will stick around because they didn't get much out of this year.
Yeah. What do you have coming up this week? Anything on the books?
Art Holiday is going to be one of our guests. Had a chance. We were going to run it last week. We thought this week would be better. We're waiting to hear back from Sheldon Richardson of the Cleveland Browns and try and get him on to talk a little bit about the NFL and what his season was like in Cleveland. And Alex Ferrario, we're going to have him coming up this week, and that'll be up tomorrow, talking about the Blues' progress so far this year. And Chris Kerber later in the week.
Awesome. Jay Randolph Jr. has another video up as well. That just got posted yesterday. One of his new Fairway and Greens videos that he has up, so you can watch that too. And then, as I mentioned, Jay's going to join me on the Fran Charles conversation this week, and let them kind of go back and forth at it some too. So lots of stuff coming up this week, and plenty more that we are working on and have plans to announce over the next couple of weeks for you as well. Because as I mentioned at the beginning of the show, Claibs, this is the last show that you're going to be doing from your place for quite some time, because next week we will be at Mungenast St. Louis Acura at 13720 Manchester Road. And then the following Monday, we will be at Mungenast Alton Toyota at 850 Homer Adams Parkway in Alton, Illinois. And then the Monday after that, you're going to be down in Florida.
That is correct. And I'm looking forward to it. Florida has been my home for a number of years, and this will be a little bit different, but somebody's got to go down there and check on the weather.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. You do that for us and report back. We will talk to you next week. We'll see you on, we'll hear from you coming up on the interviews that you have coming up this week too, as you are watching Lunch with Claibs and Joe here on claibsonline.com, powered by Ameren, Illinois, driven by Mungenast St. Louis Acura, Mungenast Alton Toyota, and sponsored by Ryan Kelly, the home loan expert. You can find him online at thehomeloanexpert.com. For Mike Claiborne, I'm Joe Roderick. We will talk to you next Monday, everybody.